I'm going to state the obvious. The world has been adapting to a different way of working and collaborating in professional working environments, at least in a lot of professions. However, it was definitely a struggle for me personally to adapt to this sort of work from home. But what I've come in this last year and a half to realize is how much more accessible and preferred it is for me. And I'm going to share what I struggled with, how I combated that, and how I also just became more aware of why I prefer it, or some kind of hybrid model at least. Let's get into this. Hey, if you're new here, my name is James Rath. I'm a legally blind filmmaker and content creator, and on this channel I share my journey with blindness as well as just accessible experiences. And through my content, I just hope that you see different. As I'm sure many people can relate, this past year and a half has had its fair share of ups, but probably quite a few downs. So for me, adapting to this work from home, remote working environment, it didn't come easy, especially because I spent last year working on a move. During this pandemic, I moved from Los Angeles to the East Coast, which is pretty drastic, especially when you're legally blind and you're moving like your life and operation from one state to another. I'm gonna have some coffee real quick. First step in having an accessible work environment, it's gotta be awake. I definitely had a fair share of funks this past year and a half. Like I just found myself some weeks being really productive, and then suddenly for like a whole month, I just find myself in the slumps. I do a lot of freelancing. As I mentioned before, I'm a filmmaker, so that plays in some of the work that I do, but I also do a lot of consulting. I do technology training, consulting, and that comes in the form of accessibility consulting, entertainment, representation of how people with disabilities, blindness in particular, are portrayed in entertainment. Remote was a little easier because a lot of the formats that I did, right, like consulting or speaking, I can do that remotely over a video conference. But there was something about doing it in person that I was also used to and enjoyed. I enjoyed that energy, that aspect of being able to travel to new cities and places to meet new people. It was always a lot of fun. Besides neighbors making noise that you really just cannot control, there are 5 challenges that I really came across when I was adapting to work from home, and those were the following. Aging computer hardware. Having computers that just were not keeping up to speed with what you needed to do, especially with video conferencing and needing maybe some level of GPU for everyone's videos on these calls, or if you're in a creative field, video editing, things like that. Yeah, you're probably gonna need to upgrade your hardware. Number 2 is just honestly motivation, staying on a routine. That was really hard because I know we joke about the fact that we could still very much be in March 2020. It feels like time has sort of just ceased to exist and we're just going at it day by day. So I know a lot of people just fell out of routine for many things. They would try to pick up routines and just, I know I'm guilty of it too. Number 3 is just honestly where I live, the comfort of your workstation, your work environment, your home office, making sure that that was comfortable. And for me, for a lot of the time, it was uncomfortable. I had a hard time just working in this space that I had set up at the time. So I'm gonna talk about how I addressed that and maybe just some tips, because I know a lot of people just cannot control the environment that they're in, and it's just kind of unfortunate circumstances that we find ourselves in during this time. Number 4 was definitely physical strain on my body. So neck, shoulders, lower back. I already pretty much struggled with some level of like chronic pain in my lower back that I oftentimes see a chiropractor or do acupuncture for. I've tried to find ways to make it more manageable more than ever, and I think I've been fairly successful at that. Number 5, last but not least, eye strain, migraines, headaches. This is already a thing that I'm very vulnerable to personally because with my ocular conditions, my ophthalmologist could probably explain it a lot better than me, but my eyes very much get fatigued a lot quicker than the average person's, very fast. If I try to focus with them, too much light intake, that will cause me to have chronic migraines. And this was a thing I was very vulnerable to as a kid, as a teenager, with school and everything, having to pretty much be forced to rely on my vision, very much the lack thereof. As I got into adulthood and I learned how to adapt to other senses using a white cane, text-to-speech on my computer, all these accessibility features, I've not had to use my eyes, and I've been a lot better with not getting these migraines to the same extent as I used to. However, this past year has definitely been, I think, for a lot of people, very telling with how much screen time we've been intaking, how much blue light is coming into our eyes, that we're experiencing major amounts of migraines. If you already noticed that I'm wearing glasses and your first question was, oh, James wears glasses for his vision, maybe it corrects, or no, these literally don't have any prescription, these don't correct anything. This is literally simply to block blue light for when I'm at the computer, because yes, I'm still looking at the computer, I'm zooming in very far into my display, but I'm also using a combination of text-to-speech and just sort of colored context clues to what I'm looking at. It's helped me tremendously. So these are a lot of the challenges I face. So looking at that, you would probably assume that maybe work from home isn't better than being in an office. Maybe it's not something that employers should be offering beyond this public health crisis, and I definitely totally disagree. And I know that different working environments work for different people. Collaborative offices are wonderful and great, especially in like maybe city environments. I will say the opportunity here for employers to more than ever consider hiring more diverse teams, be more inclusive with their hiring practices, is become very telling. All right, so with this whole work from home or hybrid model that we are adapting to or have already been implementing, yeah, some employers are not going to continue this at a certain point, and some are very much embracing it and allowing their already existing employees to continue working in these environments. When I say these environments, I mean the choice of an office or their home office, and maybe move cross country. By doing that, you can bring on people with disabilities who can add to this culture and movement of having more inclusive teams. You know, a lot of these companies, they always rave and talk about diversity and inclusion, but if you're not including the biggest marginalized group, people with disabilities that anyone can intersect, whether it's temporarily or permanently, if you're not including disabled folks in your hiring initiatives or your teams or just inclusivity practices, and you're not making your workplace accessible, you're not practicing real inclusion. Also, fun fact, it is October, which is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, so hey, make sure you're being inclusive and diverse with your company culture, practicing actual accessibility, and being willing to take feedback and implement said feedback to make it more accessible for folks. Cool. So how did I address number one? I traded in my iMac. It was a late 2015 27-inch 5K iMac, pretty decent machine. However, for things beyond just daily tasks, video editing, trying to work with 4K video, trying to do backups, and even just the startup was getting a little slow, and it was definitely aging. Personally, I traded in the iMac and I got a Mac Mini. I already had external displays, external keyboard, and because the iMac had that, and when you trade in the iMac, you don't need to give back the keyboard and trackpad or mouse. Got a Mac Mini M1, which M1 is just a powerhouse for being an entry ARM-based machine. That's Apple's new processor. I actually made a whole video talking about my Mac Mini, why I switched to it. I'm really enjoying it. It's been great. So if you have your own personal machine that you're using for your work, look into trading programs, whether it's a Mac or a PC. See what you can do. If you have a PC that is upgradable, look into what upgrades would be most efficient. My favorite accessories for the Mac Mini, M1 specifically, is this dock stand that kind of sits flush with the Mac Mini's body itself. It adds additional ports, uses one USB-C port / Thunderbolt 3. All right, how I address number two, motivation, routine. For me personally, just by getting a decent night's sleep, making my bed in the morning, it helped me feel like I'm already accomplishing something. It's actually quite nice to make a bed. I'll be completely honest, I had a bed in Los Angeles for a while. And then I made a decision, and I know some people are going to question my thought process here. When I moved from one apartment to a townhouse with roommates, I decided to get rid of my bed and I got a Japanese floor futon pretty much. And it was fine, honestly, for a while. And I did it so I had more space for work and filming. And eventually I stopped using that and I actually got like a couch to sleep on. Again, still wanting space, but I'm like, now I got a couch. It's nice to sit on it, nice to make videos on it, but I can also sleep on it or pull it out. I've kind of missed having a bed, and I feel, especially with a backboard, like an actual adult. There's something about having a backboard that makes you feel like you're in the next chapter of your life. So beyond that though, and just quick warning here, because I know this can be a little bit of a sensitive topic for some folks, but I'm gonna talk about weight. I'm gonna talk about exercising. So if you wanna move ahead, you can always hit the next chapter. Time code may be on screen. I'm gonna get a little vulnerable here. And that is, I've never been completely comfortable in my own body. I've always managed a range window of weight since high school, but I never did anything much to like tone it or to even like get it down a little bit more like I kind of wanted to, but it was always manageable. And you know, I'm not like unhealthy. I was just never fully comfortable. And so this past year and a half, as delivery services were just a lot more accessible, and I don't cook very much, and I found ways to try and make some cooking and meals more accessible for me. That might be a whole other topic for another video, but I did just find myself ordering delivery quite often, especially when you go into these funks. So I've really kind of made it routine to exercise quite often. I've had gym memberships in the past, I've done those. That's a whole other process though to get to the gym. Things like treadmills and even just jogging or running are not easy for me because with my eye condition, one being nystagmus, which causes this constant state of vertigo and it really speeds up and causes nausea and dizziness. Another thing I ended up getting was an elliptical machine, and I found that to be very helpful. With an elliptical machine, I just feel a lot more secure and safe. So yeah, that's how I made exercise a little bit more accessible for myself. And one of the main reasons I really tried to do this, especially this year in 2021, I realized at the beginning of the year, I had hit my heaviest weight. And I wasn't really thrilled or happy about that. I wanted to lose that weight, and as of right now, I've actually lost 30 pounds since May. So that was a big thing for me this summer to just work on, and not just, you know, trying to do it as fast as I can, but adequately. Let's tackle number 3, and that is being comfortable in your working environment, where you are. For me, I've been pretty messy. I have pretty bad ADHD, as I opened up about in a previous video recently. Another reason why I just needed to address a lot of these things was my ADHD, the visual impairment, and just the adapting to this remote working. It needed structure, organization, and to tackle certain aspects. And for me to be comfortable in my working environment, I need to make sure things were clean and organized, which I wasn't good at first. That's just, my brain's a little bit of a mess. Eventually with routine, with tidying up, even when I moved, I did get rid of a lot of things, but I also shipped like 20 boxes of things almost. Did I really get rid of a whole lot? Not necessarily, but enough to the point where I felt like the space that I had made sense for the amount of stuff that I had. Now, when you have people living with you, which I had for a little bit here, not everyone's the same. Not everyone is as neat or tidy or on the same routine as you. And that can really mess me up. As long as I kept my space, my environment pretty tidy and clean and where I do my work, it made it just a little bit better. So prior, I had my gaming setup and my podcasting situation next to the desk that also contained my Mac Mini, my daily computer, my work computer. It wasn't the best for habits. I would oftentimes just turn on the game consoles and passively play. I got too distracted and I wasn't productive enough. And by separating them, at first it was opposite sides of the room, the office, and now they're just in completely different rooms. Now, some other things I did for the atmosphere of the room was actually invest in some smart lights. I first started off on Amazon with some cheaper ones. They can be a little finicky, a little glitchy at times, but they worked. And you can definitely find some that work with like Alexa, Google Home, or HomeKit with Siri. I eventually upgraded to Hue lights, which so much more reliable, a lot less of a hassle, and eventually Nanoleaf. But again, I didn't just invest in these right away. I wanted to make sure this was a thing that would work out for me. Like when you go to your employer, sometimes it's just too bright. Sometimes the lights are just uncomfortable. And you do just get adjusted or used to it, but you also never do when you're just not into it. So just being able to control the lights in your room, even having a speaker that maybe sounds good enough, like for me, that's one reason I got the HomePod Mini. It does sound decent. It sounds really decent for a speaker, so I can play music, podcasts, even just some lo-fi. That helps with some of my concentration. I would just say invest in some smart or some LED lights that have the ability to change your lighting environment to better adjust temperature or even color. So this is like a screen panel room divider. Might be referred to as a shoji originally. That's what the listing on Amazon said. But I use this thing all the time as like a backdrop, or when I'm just trying to separate living space or other kind of office space with, you know, where I'm trying to get some work done. Highly recommend getting one of these if you just feel like you need some division. Could be even if you live with someone. Make them handy. Number 4, things that I did to tackle the physical strain and pain that I had endured during these long work days. And that was, one, just making sure I had a comfortable chair, because at one point I did not. So just needed to get a better chair. And then you can get, you know, cushions for lumbar, things like that. Another thing that I wish I got sooner, and I didn't get until like this year, I wish I got it last year, but that was a standing desk converter. Something that lets me make it go standing or sitting. I know some people just get like a standing desk, but I love the option of switching, because a lot of the pain that I personally have from this athletic injury from some years ago, I get a sharp shooting pain, sometimes down to my leg, from my lower back. And to address that, I need to shift position. So I can't be sitting forever, I can't be standing forever. And when you're in an office or in a work environment that requires that, it's not comfortable. It's not easy, and I need some accommodations at that point. But being able to just quickly, every 20, 30 minutes or so, I can just shift from standing to sitting. One other thing that I started doing beyond the Ring Fit Adventure or Apple Fitness Plus, my daily walks to help with that, but it was also meditation, just breathing exercises, stretching. For those who can definitely see my cable management skills, I'm legally blind, doesn't matter to me, as long as it's not in my way. I'm fine with it. Let's talk about number 5, the eye strain, the migraines. And I know I mentioned it before, getting some kind of blue shield glasses definitely helps a lot. And if you don't have it already into your prescription, I recommend doing that, because I did not realize how significant of an impact these would have. Like I really do get like 2, 3, 4 more hours of just eye usage throughout the day with these on. You know, I may not use them first thing in the morning. Sometimes I do. It kind of depends how my eyes are feeling, but it really does help prolong that migraine. Of course, other things you can be doing is just taking eye rest breaks occasionally when you can, closing your eyes. But the other thing I recommend that most computers should have an option for, especially modern operating systems, whether you're on a Mac, Windows, Android, Chromebook, maybe. I think I've barely ever touched a Chromebook, so I don't know. But iOS and an iPad, you can turn on some warm color temperature display option. So on like the Apple side, it's called night shift. Might be called something else elsewhere. Those really do help. Be careful if you're doing photography or something that you have to pay attention to color. Whenever you don't have to do that, just killing off the blue light on the display and these software options doing that for you, it makes it so much easier. It's great. I love it personally. And so I always end up turning it on at some point during the day. But the other thing you could really be doing is going into your accessibility options. So of course, I am a person who utilizes a lot of assistive technology, a lot of accessibility settings within these kinds of devices. But if you have never really found yourself doing that, I maybe recommend doing it. Look into things specifically for display, because you might find things like motion reducing or even high contrast settings to be very helpful. Even dark modes for me are very much preferred. Now, my brother, who also has similar eye conditions, he prefers light mode, and I think he is a madman. But at the same time, to each their own, and so do what works best for you. Keep in mind, if you're looking for a particular product that I mentioned, links will be provided in the description. Those are affiliate links, so just keep that in mind. Those have been my personal challenges and solutions, or at least band-aids, for addressing and supporting those struggles. Although I'm a person with a severe visual impairment, ADHD, and some chronic pain, I feel like these struggles are pretty universal, and even the ways that I address them are pretty beneficial for everyone. So I'm curious, let me know if there's anything that I listed here that would help you, as well as maybe something I didn't even mention, something that you have found a solution for, or you're maybe still looking for some support, and that's where that comment, that open forum can help to chime in. And with all of that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you could see different today, and I'll hear you next time. Bye.